Hey, everybody, welcome to week 5. The semester is flying by. This week, you are going to be submitting your next paper. And over the past weekend and today, you will have received a grade on your personal narratives. So, a couple of things, make sure that you do go open your grade book, look at your feedback, look at how you scored in each category of the rubric. And then if you have any questions about it, please send me an inbox message. Do not just put a comment in the place with the assignment because it does not notify me that there is one. So if you have questions, you do need to make sure that you use inbox to follow up. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on this week. All right. So, as usual, I want to start with the schedule. We are working on the definition paper this week, which also means that we have some grammar to do. This week, you're going to be looking at sentence fragments, run-ons, and comma splices. And I will say that comma splices were one of the most common issues in the personal narrative. So this is a well-timed grammar lesson. So in addition to turning in the paper, you do have a grammar review to do as well this week. So keep that in mind. We are already kind of in the process of doing research. And we've talked about it a little bit, but do be aware that next week we're going to get more into research at the college level and what that entails. So just a little preview of what's coming up there. So in the module, you will notice that we have some learning materials for you this week. There's no new readings, but of course, I've got the links back to the definition chapter in Lumen Learning, as well as definition in the Valencia LibGuide, where it talks about definition and what that means. I also have added some additional videos for you. These are all related to finding, citing, and incorporating sources into your writing, because you are going to need to use some research as you complete your definition paper. So what I have for you there is a video on MLA format and citation. It's a review, adding citations to the works cited. And then there's one that was for a different class, but at 10 minutes almost to the on the nose, there's some really good information about library. So keep in mind, you can fast forward to 10 minutes on this last one. But you can watch the whole thing. I mean, nobody's going to stop you, but the most helpful information for you guys will be at minute 10. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at a sample paper. One of the things that I did last week was talk about finding sources and finding how to cite those sources in MLA, because that's what we're using. And you are going to be using some sources for this paper and all of the rest of our papers for that matter. And so we need to get started kind of going in that direction. So one of the things that I mentioned last week that I think is really important is that when you are planning a paper, when you're in the pre-writing stage and you're finding sources, it is super important, and I'm going to scroll down there because it's that important, to create your works cited page before you ever start writing the paper. Most people want to do it last because, of course, it comes last. It is at the end. Oh, and I already see that I made a mistake. Well, I'm going to show you how to fix that mistake. Anyway, so I did a research paper, a definition paper on family. And the reason I chose family was because it's not one of the topics that you guys are going to be working on, because I didn't want to write anybody's paper for you. But family is another term that we could write an extended definition paper on. So this is a sample of the kind of paper that you're going to write for the definition assignment. You will notice that some of my research comes from the internet and some of my research comes from the library. Anytime you see something like this that says EBSCOhost or ABC Clio, those are databases that the library shares. But most of these are from the internet. And I don't expect you to do hardcore library research for the definition paper, because we're going to get more into that next week. But I did show you a little bit of how to get to there and all that good stuff. The nice thing about using library research is that the MLA citations are provided for you. So all you have to do when you're taking your notes is copy and paste them. With websites, of course, you do have to figure out how to make that citation. And there are some really good, helpful websites. Like scribber.com and easybib.com, but sometimes those can be clunky and hard to use. It is better to know how to do it yourself. And the best place to look for that is in the library guides for MLA and APA citations. And we talked about those last week. If you go to the library, the where the library is, you will see the links to those. Those are super helpful. So keep that in mind. All right. So let's go back to the front. Now, the biggest trick for most people is citing the sources not on the works cited page, because most people are aware that, yes, I have to have a works cited page. The hard part is citing them what we call in text or in parenthetical citation format. So those two things go together. You have to have a citation in the paper that matches a citation on the works cited page. And the way that we do that is because the parentheses contain a shorthand version of that longer citation. So that's why you don't need to put the whole thing in the parentheses. It's going to tell the reader which source on that list did this come from. So let's take a look at the introduction. I opened with a quotation, which is a common kind of opening for a paper. Family is not an important thing, it's everything. And this is a quote by the actor Michael J. Fox, and it was on a website called 55 Family. Well, that wasn't the website title, that's the article title, but it's from a website. And so you'll notice that in the parentheses, it has quotation marks, and it says 55 Family. If we scroll down to the works cited, you will know right away which one that is, because 55 Family is what comes first in the works cited entry. What goes in the parenthetical citation matches what comes first. So this one has an author, so Andretti's name will be in it. This one has an author, so Baker's name will be in it. This one was the next one up, and I know that because I just saw it as I was breezing through here. This one, Family Instability, notice that all three of these have the word family towards the beginning. So one of the things that I have to do when I am using my parenthetical citation is I have to give you enough information so you know which one. So notice I used 55 Family on the first one. Family is the only thing in the second one. So that's what I had to use as my parenthetical citation. Family Instability is what I'm going to use for that YouTube. And down here, we have another one that's not got an author, J.D. Vance, really, and I will use J.D. Vance in quotation marks, and that will be what I use in the in-text citation. This one has two authors, so I will need to use both Salisbury and Kirsten's name in the citation. And I also noticed that I didn't put a period there, so we're going to change that. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this to the top because numbers come before even A. You should notice that this is in alphabetical order. Every time you create a bibliography of any kind, whether it's a works cited or a reference page or just a straight up bibliography, they are in alphabetical order. So I need to move this one to the top. There we go. I don't know why I missed that when I was doing this over the weekend, but we're going to save this. And when I give you this document, it will be in the right order. So you notice when you look through the works cited that there is always something that comes first. And that's how we know what goes in the parenthetical citation. And very rarely do we need any other information other than sometimes we'll have a page number that we can refer to. You'll notice this one from the library with Catherine Baker. Notice it even has the page numbers here, 1249 to 317. And it was a PDF file, so I could actually see the page number. So when we cite that one, you'll notice that it will have Baker, but it also has page numbers. And here is the best instance of that. It doesn't need to have Baker inside that parentheses only because I've used her name right here. So what goes in the parenthetical citation matches what comes first unless you say it. So I could have said, according to 55 family quotes, and then not had it. But when you don't have an author, it's always better to just use the title in the parenthetical citations. So as we go through here, I want to show you kind of how much is me or the student and how much is from sources. So this obviously is a direct quotation, but nothing else in this first paragraph came from research, and it isn't cited. So that's another way we know it didn't come from research. This is my introduction. And then the thesis statement is, clearly the term family is more complicated than it might seem at face value, and there is value in exploring the various meanings of the word. That's a good thesis statement for a definition paper. Nothing wrong with it. Everything's cool there. In the second paragraph, I start off with the dictionary definitions, and I use dictionary.com. You can use another dictionary if you prefer. Merriam-Webster has a good online dictionary as well. Oxford Dictionary is always fabulous, but dictionary.com is fine to get the basic definition of your term. And so you will notice that there are two things cited in this particular paragraph, and they are both direct quotations. One says a group of one or more parents and the children living together as a unit. And then the second definition was all the descendants of a common ancestor. Notice again that it doesn't have a page number because it's a website, and it just has that title, quotation mark title, in the in-text citation. They are cited separately because there's two separate quotes, and I have named the website dictionary.com, but I do not have to use dictionary.com in the in-text citation because it is not first. Okay. The next paragraph, I'm talking about information that I got from an article about family in the ancient world, and Greg Adretti was the author of that particular one. I do include a direct quote here, but I also am citing him when he's not speaking directly by saying Gregory Adretti points out that the importance of extended family, often referring to the term by the term clan. So that sentence is still cited because I've mentioned his name, but I have a quote from him in the next one. And even though I've mentioned his name, I don't have a page number. So I have to use his name. That's what I have. So in the in-text citation with the quote, notice it's Adretti. Notice while we're on this that the quotation mark comes first, then the citation, and then the period. And you'll see that in both. Well, this sentence doesn't end after the citation, but this one does. So quotation mark, citation, period. Okay. Next, we have a paragraph that has information from research, but there's nothing that is directly quoted. According to Daily Life Through History. Now that title is the source title. So if we come down here, it's the Kirsten, Salisbury and Kirsten one. And I didn't use the title of the article. I used the title of the publication, Daily Life Through History. You can use the title of the article as well. It doesn't matter. But having a way to introduce where that information came from is a great way to kick off the paragraph. And it also allows me to show that everything between here and here is from Salisbury and Kirsten. The last sentence is not, and you notice it's not got a citation in it. This is my interpretation, student's interpretation. So you don't have to cite anything that is your own thought and opinion and interpretation. You also don't need to point out, this is my thought or opinion. Okay. Use that standard objective third-person voice, as I do here. Much of the political debate in 21st century America revolves around the tension between older concepts of family and what we see now, in fact. So, interpretation. All right, next paragraph, and I didn't really want to get into anything controversial, but I mean, it's hard it's hard to avoid quotes from JD Vance right now. So anyway, and it is relevant to the family thing. So I included a little bit of fun stuff. So there were two videos or two articles, one YouTube video and one article that I used in this particular paragraph. So I don't have a big thing about according to YouTube. I mean, anybody can post on YouTube. So YouTube itself is not that exciting as a source. YouTube is mentioned in the citation, but in the introduction of this information, I don't say according to YouTube. If it was the New York Times, I might, because it's a reputable source. So we have a direct quote, but just one phrase, and then the rest of the sentence is still cited, family instability. And then the next one, again, is partially a quote, partially in, summary and paraphrasing. And then at the end, after both of those things are cited, there's no more citations because it's interpretive. While many of his fellow Republicans have come out strongly against these extreme views, there are a lot of people who long for a return to the early 20th century concept of family as a married mother and father living in a house with their biological children, which reminded me of TV. And so the next paragraph doesn't actually involve research because these are all television shows that I actually know. So you notice I haven't cited much, and if anything, no, not anything in this paragraph. So I'm just talking about TV shows, and I'm not using like a direct quote from the TV show or something specific from the TV show. I'm just talking about the shows. And so there's no citation for that. But if you wanted to do some research on a television show and include research, you certainly can. Couple of things. Notice that all of the TV shows are in italics. The titles for TV shows go in italics. If I were using episode titles, those would be in quotation marks. So it's just like a web page as part of a bigger website or an article as part of a magazine. The individual thing gets quotation marks, and then the big thing gets italics. So I have some information about some TV shows throughout the century, last century mostly, and into this century. And then I get into some of the legal ramifications of family with the Catherine Baker article. And again, I'm not quoting her, I'm just paraphrasing her. And so in each case, I have two bits of information that came directly out of that article, one on page 1251 and one on page 1257. So those again are cited separately because they appear in completely different parts of the article. Now, because I have just used her name, I didn't put Baker in either one of these. I could have put Baker in this one because I did not mention her in that sentence. I didn't do it because there are two sentences in a row, so it's still very clear. But I tell you what, I'm going to leave it, and we're going to save this again, and I'm going to leave it. Why not? One of the primary arguments, et cetera, et cetera. And then I talk about my own family and finally have a conclusion where I do have one additional quotation by Dan Gemenhert. But he did not write the article that it's quoted from. So it's quoted, that's what QTD period means, in Fraser. And if you look down here, you will see that Karen Fraser had put together a website article called 45 Chosen Family Quotes That Celebrate Connection. But I don't have to use 45 Chosen because it did list her as the author, or in this case, the curator, because she's compiling other people's quotes. The website was called Love to Know, and there is the citation. But in this particular case, because Gemenhart isn't on the works cited page, I have to show you where it really came from. If you just put Fraser, nothing bad's going to happen to you, but it isn't that person who said it. So quoted in Fraser is actually the appropriate way to do that. So there is your sample. And like I said, I'm going to save this and I'm going to share it with you in the announcement along with this lovely video. If you have any questions as you're putting together your definition papers this week, please do reach out. I am more than happy to